How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Talking Wolves and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be talking all about the Europa League. Wolves have qualified for the knockout stages, so I'm going to be quickly talking about the possible opponents Wolves may have come Monday's draw. There's a number of teams that I'm going to be looking at and talking about today, the logistics of it, the teams, a little bit more information of those, and potential away allocations for you fans that do want to go and visit some of these teams and obviously go and watch some of these matches. So, of course, Wolves ended up finishing second in their group despite a massive 4-0 victory against Besiktas at home. And because Wolves finished second, they are unseeded in their group. So that means we are going to obviously play any of the teams that finished top in their Europa League group and some of the teams that finished third that came down from the Champions League. The only teams that we cannot face off against are the teams such as Manchester United and Arsenal, as they are English teams. But I'm going to be talking through the rest of those teams. If there are any teams in this list that you really do want to go and see Wolves face off against, whether it's because you'd love to see Wolves play against them or whether you think it's going to be an easy passage into the next round, let me know in the comment section down below. I want to see all your thoughts and all your reasonings behind the teams in there. So I'll quickly go through all the teams and then we'll look at all of the teams in a little bit more detail. So in full, the teams at Wolves... the teams that are possible opponents for Wolves in the next round of the Europa League are as follows. So, Ajax, Inter Milan, Benfica, Red Bull Salzburg, Sevilla, Malmo, Espanyol, Lask, Celtic, Porto, Ghent, Istanbul, Basak Sehir, and Basel. So there are, as you guys will know already, some massive teams in there, some big opponents potentially for Wolves come Monday's draw. So I've put a little bit more information together on these. I've also got some possible ticket allocations for the round of 32. These are courtesy of Retro Wolves 1 on Twitter. So I saw this, I thought that'd be great to add to the video. So if any of these are dreadfully wrong, please blame him and not me. But a big thanks to Retro Wolves 1 for those allocations. So, team number 1 is Ajax. They're currently top of the Eredivisie in Holland at the time of recording by 3 points. They finished third in their group behind Chelsea and Valencia in the Champions League, so they fall down to the Europa League. Got a pick of a couple of players, Dusan Tadic, Ziyech, Edson Alvarez, who of course was so heavily linked with Wolves in the summer. They've got Quincy Promes, Neres. They've got some really decent players. They're probably one of the toughest teams that Wolves could face off against. We saw how good they were in the Champions League last year. This year, with the loss of a couple of key players, it hasn't quite clicked for them, but still definitely a very, very tough team to come up against. In terms of possible ticket allocation for that one, it's around 2,750, so just below the 3,000 mark, but still a pretty tasty and a pretty hefty away allocation either way. We'll move on now to Inter Milan. Well, what a story this could be. Inter Milan, for me, probably the strongest team on paper out of all those teams that we could come up against. Of course, Antonio Conte in charge of them at the moment. And at the moment, they are top of Serie A, ahead of Juventus. So are they going to be prioritising the league ahead of the Europa League? They've got quite a little bit of a break now between now and the next round anyway. But Inter Milan, for me, one of the strongest teams in there. For me, they play a very similar way to Wolves. They play like a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3. Lautaro Martinez and Romelu Lukaku up top at the moment. Probably one of the strongest teams still in the competition. Probably one of the favourites. But so last year at the San Siro, I know a lot of fans want to go to that ground, and to witness Wolves there would be unbelievable. So they're one of the teams. Of course, they finished third in their group behind Dortmund and Barcelona. They had a tough group there for sure. In terms of allocation, now this could be absolutely anything. At least 4,000 minimum, and it could be up to about 10,000 because the ground is so big and Wolves could demand a huge allocation if we know we're going to sell it. And I think if we did draw them, we would sell that sort of allocation out. We'd at least sell out the minimum of 4,000, which again would be an absolutely unbelievable away day. So another team to drop down from the Champions League was Benfica. So, of course, now they are in one of our possible opponents for the next round of the Europa League, finishing third in their group as well. They're currently top of the Premier Liga in Portugal. ahead of Porto at the moment, who we'll talk about in a second. But of course, they've got some great players. Ruben Diaz, who is so heavily linked with. We could, of course, sign one or two of their players come January to face off against Benfica. So that'll be an interesting one. The other team that we could face off against, of course, from Portugal as well, is Porto. They're second behind Benfica. Had quite a shaky start to the Europa League campaign. By the end, they topped Group G and qualified alongside Rangers. Again, in terms of players, they've got Alex Telles, Danilo Pereira, Pepe, and so on as well. So good players there. In terms of allocations for Benfica and for Porto, probably get about 2,500. Benfica just over 3,000 indeed. So decent for the away fans again. We'll move over to another team that dropped down from the Champions League, Red Bull Salzburg, one of the talks of the Champions League campaign, really. Currently top of the Austrian Bundesliga. They finished third in Group E in the Champions League behind Napoli and Liverpool. It was quite a tough group for them. But will all their key players be there come January? Is heavily linked with all of their free attackers. Erling Haaland looks like he could be off to Germany. Takumi Minamino looks like he's off to Liverpool. And Hwang Hee-chan heavily linked with Wolves as well. We will be doing a video on him next week. But Red Bull Salzburg, another possible opponent, but some of their key players could be gone come January. We'll stick with an Austrian side as well. We've got Lask. Also known as Linzer Athletic Sport Club. They're currently second in the Austrian Bundesliga behind Red Bull Salzburg. They've got some big results. They've got some big upsets. They topped Group D ahead of Sporting and PSV. PSV from Holland, who were knocked out. So although on paper I'd probably say it's a favourable draw, a lot of people have already told me they are a little bit of a dark horse to look out for with some of their results so far. In terms of allocations for those two, Salzburg, you get about 1,500. Lask, they play at a slightly different ground to their actual home ground due to Europa League regulations, so you get about 1,000. So two fairly smaller allocations there from those. Sevilla are the next team, another team that in the end are looking good this season, finishing top of Group A in the Europa League with 15 points, more points than any other team in the Europa League group stage. However, they won all of their games apart from their final matchup. They're third in La Liga in Spain at the moment, only behind Barcelona and Real Madrid. So definitely, they are one of the teams to look out for in the next round. And of course, they're in charge of them at the moment. Their manager is Julian Lopetegui, who is so heavily linked with Wolves when Fosun were taking over. And of course, we missed out on him in the end as he took the Spain national team job. Sticking with Spain as well, you got Espanyol, currently rock bottom of La Liga, not having a good time in the league at the moment. However, a break in Europe now up until February could do them good in terms of their league. They topped Group H with 11 points. In terms of players, they've got Chinese forward Wu Li as well, who was linked with Wolves last year. Malmo are another team. They're currently second in, season now finished, so they finished second in the Allsvenskan in Sweden. Their season's finished now, so there's a bit of a weird one in Sweden where they finish the season in November and it restarts in sort of March time. So they have quite a big break, and of course these games will come when they're not really playing regular football, which could be a huge advantage for Wolves. They ended up finishing top of Group B with 11 points, and their current manager is Uwe Rosler, the German ex-Brentford manager, ex-Manchester City player as well. Moving on to Celtic, I know plenty of you guys know about Celtic as well. Top of the SPL at the moment, ended up topping Group E. They qualified alongside Cluj. They, of course, knocked out Lazio and Rennes from that group. Odson Edouard, Forest and so on. Playing for those. I know a lot of you guys will know quite a number about Celtic. In terms, of allocations from a couple of those, Sevilla is just over 2,000, Malmo just over 1,000, and Espanyol just over 2,000 as well. In terms of Celtic, Celtic about 3,000 as well, so decent allocation for Celtic, and probably the easiest in terms of travel to get to. We move on to Ghent. They're currently second in the Belgian Pro League. They topped Group I with no losses. They got 3 wins and 3 draws, so pretty decent run for them. You get an allocation of about 1,000 if we drew them in the next round. Istanbul, Başakşehir, we'll be going back to Istanbul, of course, having Besiktas in our group as well. Başakşehir are currently 4th in the Turkish Super League, sitting behind Besiktas, who are currently second. Of course, Wolves beating Besiktas twice. Başakşehir topped Group J in the end ahead of Roma, and they knocked out Mönchengladbach, who are currently top of the German Bundesliga. So a pretty big achievement for them. They've got some decent players, Edin Visca, Arda Turan, and so on as well. In terms of allocation from that one, would only be about 1,000 as well. And the final team that we're going to be looking at is Basel. They're currently second in the Swiss Super League, 1 point behind the current leaders. They ended up topping Group C, qualifying along with Getafe, and an allocation of just under 2,000, possibly, if we drew against them. Hopefully, I know it was a bit of a quick one, but hopefully you guys understood some of the opponents. Let me know who you reckon we should come up against. The first leg is going to be home, which and we'll be away in the second leg, which some people do see as a disadvantage, but hopefully with the home leg we can get ourselves quick and up and going as quick as we can and try and get a good advantage going into an away tie. In terms of those games, for me, although they'll be good, all right, I'll split it into two. Teams that I think we should beat quite easily, and teams that, for me, would be great experiences as a Wolves fan. Great experiences, I'd love to see us at the Amsterdam Arena Ajax. Inter at San Siro would be a no-brainer. Benfica and Porto would be fantastic too. In terms of teams that we should beat, Espanyol are in disarray at the moment. I think that should be a win there. Ghent, Malmo, I think with them being in the off-season could be an advantage, and Basel as well. I did say Lask, but as I say, a couple of people pointed them out as possible dark horses. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Let me know who you'd like to take on in the Europa League. And I should be back. Well, I'll be back over the weekend with some of the Premier League content, and we'll be back next week with some transfer and more Europa League content. Be sure to hit the like button down below, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you do. And until next time, I'll see you all very, very soon.